All right, welcome back everyone to Vuln Vibes. Today we're going to dig into some pretty concerning stuff happening at PostgreSQL databases.
Yeah, definitely a situation that needs attention. We've got details on two new security vulnerabilities in pgAdmin 4.
Right, and they're not small potatoes either. We're talking remote code execution and cross-site scripting.
Yeah, both pretty serious. So anyone out there managing PostgreSQL environments, especially using pgAdmin 4, you're going to want to listen closely here.
All right, so let's get into it. First up, CVE 2025-2945, a remote code execution vuln with a CVSS score of 9.9. That's almost perfect.
Yeah, that's as bad as it gets, basically.
So 9.9, that means it's a critical issue, but give us the details. Where's the entry point for this RCE?
Okay, so this vulnerability affects pgAdmin 4 users on versions 9.1 and earlier, specifically those using the query tool and cloud deployment modules.
Got it. And the specific weak points.
The weak points are two POST endpoints, Skeleton and Torque retool download, and cloud deploy.
Okay, so what about those endpoints makes them vulnerable?
The problem is with how the application handles certain parameters within those endpoints. So specifically in the query tool, we're talking about the query committed parameter, and in cloud deployment, it's the high availability parameter.
All right, and what is it about those parameters that enables this direct code execution? What's the root cause?
Right. So basically these parameters, they take user-supplied data, but then they pass it directly to Python's evil function. And the problem is there's no sanitization of that input whatsoever.
So you're saying any code an attacker injects through those parameters gets treated as a legitimate command on the server?
Yeah, pretty much. It's executed directly. That's why this vulnerability has such a high severity score, because it's a direct path to potentially compromising the entire system.
Okay, so RCE, that's a huge problem. But we also have this other issue, CVE 2025-2946, cross-site scripting. Still a high severity, a 9.1. But maybe break that down a bit. How does this XSS flaw work? Different attack vector, right?
Right, yeah. So this one stems from the way pgAdmin 4 handles query results. Essentially, if a database query returns a malicious payload, like one containing HTML or JavaScript, pgAdmin 4 doesn't sanitize the output at all.
So it just displays whatever comes back from the database, no filtering.
Exactly. So an attacker can craft a query that returns, say, a script tag with some malicious JavaScript.
And that script would then execute in the user's browser.
Exactly, just like that. Imagine a simple query like select script alert XSS scripts.
Instead of just showing that text, it would actually pop up an alert box.
Exactly. That's just a basic example, but you can see how an attacker could escalate that to steal cookies, session data, or even manipulate the application itself.
Yeah, that lack of output sanitization is a big deal. So we've got these two critical vulnerabilities, RCE and XSS, both affecting pgAdmin 4 versions 9.1 and earlier. For anyone listening who's using pgAdmin 4, what's the absolute most important thing they need to do right now?
Upgrade.
Yeah.
Immediately. Get to version 9.2 or later. That's the patched version, and there's no reason to wait. The risk is just too high.
All right, upgrading is the first step. But these vulnerabilities also highlight some broader security principles that are important for all of us in IT security. What are some of those key takeaways?
So the big one here is input validation and sanitization. It's absolutely crucial to sanitize all user-supplied data before it's processed or displayed. It seems simple, but these vulnerabilities show what happens when those basic steps are missed.
Right, no matter how trusted a tool or application is, we can't assume input is safe. And beyond sanitization, anything else that stood out to you about these vulnerabilities?
Well, this case really highlights the danger of functions like Python's evil. You're basically giving any input the power to execute code directly, and that's incredibly risky. If you absolutely have to use functions like evil, the input validation has to be rock solid. And even then, it's often better to find alternative approaches that don't rely on such direct code execution.
Absolutely. So strong input validation, minimizing the use of risky functions. These are crucial for secure coding practices. Any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that security is an ongoing process. It's not just about patching vulnerabilities as they come up. It's about building a secure mindset into every stage of development. And for anyone listening, think about how these vulnerabilities could be leveraged in the context of, say, a MITRE ATT and CK framework. How could an attacker chain these exploits together to achieve their goals? That kind of thinking is what will help us stay ahead of the curve.
That's great advice. Always be thinking about those attack chains and how vulnerabilities could be exploited in different scenarios. Well, great insights as always. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the pgAdmin 4 security landscape.
I'm glad to be here. Stay safe out there, everyone.
And to all our listeners, stay vigilant and keep those systems patched. We'll catch you next time on Vuln Vibes.